grade team, and we're just going to chat with you a little bit today about how we utilize the buddy system in third grade to help support our students' behavioral needs and then just social emotional learning, looking through that trauma-informed lens.
Tell me a little bit about your break folder system.
So we have these very pretty break folders that we use in our classrooms, and they're filled with lots of goodies for the kiddos. The first thing is it's a different color for each teacher, so it's easily recognizable where the students are coming from when they come into our classroom. They all have a fun little Bitmoji of ourselves to make the kids feel calm and comfortable. Inside, there are 2 pockets, one for completed work and then one for, they're just 1-minute break sheets. These all came from the SEL Canvas folder that Becky shared with us at our last PLC day. There was some 1-minute interventions. So we just went through and printed a bunch off that are in the folder. A couple different ways you could use it. I just keep all of the papers in, and my students know when they finish one to put it on the finish side, so I don't have to constantly be putting papers in, but you could also put 1 paper in at a time if you would preferred. Then on the back, we just have some feelings. So when they're in the break station, that they can just kind of reflect on what they're feeling and what got them to that feeling. So the break folder, after we made them, we introduced it to the students. Can do it a couple different ways. You could have one that's just for your classroom, and then any student can use that break folder. In my classroom, I have a few friends that need specific breaks, so they have their name on their folder and they have a spot where they have it in their classroom or in our classroom, and I just will say to them, I think that you need a break right now, or maybe it's Mrs. Jacobson needs a break right now, so can you take your folder and go see Mrs. Schmidt? Or I will just assign a teacher at that time. They don't have, well, they do have pre-assigned teachers, but if that teacher's absent, then they could go to another classroom where we are all aware of the system, so we just welcome the students into our room, and they just go to that room to take a 1 to 5 minute break as needed.
How did the team determine the need for this system?
So we started playing around with the idea of sending kids to other classrooms last year when there were substitutes. We found that students had a really hard time when subs were in our rooms, and so we started asking the other teachers on the third grade team if kids could check in with them, and that started working. And then it started being, can they work for extended periods of time in your room when there's a sub? So this year, as we were getting our classroom routines ready and talking about the behaviors in our rooms, we talked through having that system be put in place, not just when there is a sub, but in everyday learning. And so we kind of talked through how we wanted it to look, and we had seen some ideas on Pinterest and online, and so we kind of merged all the ideas into what worked for our team, which was the break folder. And then in our room, we each kind of set up that break spot and went through a little bit of how it would work when kids come in. And so we have a little space. This is my break corner that kids in my own room can use, but then also when other students come in, this is where they go to take their break. They come in with their folder. It's the color, so I know who they are. And instead of just picking all the kids from Jacobson's room would come see me, we talked through that it seemed like a better fit to think about each child, especially those who we know, like Mrs. Jacobson said, that always need that folder. They go to a specific person that they've built a rapport with. So I have a handful of kids who I now know, and they know the systems in my room, and they're ready to come in. And that seems to be working better than all the kids from one room go to another class. Just we talked through what personalities will work best with each other, what other students are in the room that we want to take into consideration, things like that.
Okay. What does it look like when another student comes to your class?
So when a student walks in, usually they know right where to go. So they'll go to the assigned spot in that room. So for instance, if they come to Mrs. Schmidt's room, they go here. And most of the time, the other teacher might be teaching. So they know they walk in quietly, they get started right away on their break folder. So they'll come in and they'll take down one of those break sheets that Mrs. Jacobson talked about, and they'll get right to work. And then as a teacher, we find the time to take a minute and break from our students, whether it's the students are working independently or we finished our mini lesson. And then we go over and sit down with that student and kind of ask them questions like, okay, what are you doing here? Or why, what made you upset, and just kind of figuring out how they were feeling. A lot of times we'll like assess how they're feeling and have them tell us, even on a scale score of like 1 to 3, how do you feel right now, and talk through, and then always giving them that piece before they go back of going, okay, what are you going to do when you go back to class? What is it going to look like when you go back to class? And what do we need to change? That kind of, maybe it was they needed a break, so what are we going to change when we go back to class? And really having that talking piece before we send them off.
And sometimes it's a really short break, like 1 to 3 minutes, and sometimes it is a little bit extended, depending on if that student really needs to calm down, or maybe it's to complete an assignment. Maybe they weren't really working in their other classroom and they just need that break. And so it might be, okay, you can come back. And that will be something from the homeroom teacher might say, when you finish this, you can come, and you're ready, you can come back. So sometimes it's longer and sometimes it's shorter. Most of the times the kids know what they need to do when they get there.
How does the break folder system function for your team of teachers?
It's been working really well in our classrooms. It's all due to open communication. If I send a child to another classroom, I make sure to check in with them like later on in the day, or maybe the next day, whenever like we have time real quick to check in and see, was the child either working on their break folder, or was the child completing their work that they needed to? Do they have a good rapport with the teacher? And if they don't, maybe you need to switch it up a little bit and choose a different teacher. Or do they have friends in that classroom, and so that's why they're wanting to come into the classroom? And if so, which other teacher could you send that child to? It's all about just having like that open communication and making sure that teacher is a good fit for that child.